Jeff, are you ready? Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Friday, May 19th, 2023. It is 11 a.m. This is a remote meeting, and this meeting will be recorded and broadcast on Westborough TV. Do I need to read the pursuant clause out?
Yes.
Okay. Furthermore, pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so in the following manner, using the meeting link, https://meet.google.com/SEAVX-CIG, or dial in the US 1-740-760-1184, and the PIN is 153-730-517#, which was posted as part of our agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. If unable to do so for reasons of economic hardship and despite best efforts, we will post on the committee's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. This meeting will also be available on Westborough TV. Okay, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have 2 sets of minutes for approval. The ones from, first of all, March 21st. And any corrections or comments on the 21st? Assuming people have had an opportunity to review them. I didn't find anything.
I move to accept.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a move and second. All those in favor, I think, do we need to do a roll call, Alan?
Yes, because we're on video.
Okay, can you please do the roll call, Alan?
Sure. I'm just going to go in order on the screen. Mr. Bain.
Bain, yes.
Armitage.
Yes.
Storm.
Storm, yes.
Crouch.
Yes.
Salzman.
Yes.
Edinburgh, yes. The motion passes 6-0 with 6 present.
Okay, perfect. Okay, moving on to the minutes of April 13th. I have one comment. It's under, it's on page 2 under the first-time buyer program. It's the last bullet. And the point was Mr. Rauch asked if Rockland Trust is partnering with MHP on the programs. Mr. Enberg noted that MHP has a list of participating lenders. I believe that Ms. Storm did in real time do an inquiry and saw that Rockland Trust was a member. Do you recall that, Kate? I see you shaking your head. Yes.
I do recall that.
Okay, good. So I would suggest that we add.
I'm adding that now. I'm adding Ms. Storm looked this up and noted that Rockland Trust is a partner.
Perfect. Okay, any other comments or changes? If not, motion.
Motion to accept as amended?
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, Hank, seconded. Can you call the roll, please, Mr. Secretary?
Sure. Mr. Salzman,
Yes.
Crouch,
Yes.
Storm,
Storm, yes.
Armitage,
Yes.
Bain,
Bain, yes.
and Adams, yes. Motion passes 6-0, 6-0, 6 being present.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. The Baylor Avenue project, RFP update. As some of you were present at the meeting on May 3rd, we had one potential bidder attend, Mr. Mark Hagan from MCO, who asked a few questions, which I believe were sent out to everybody. Shab Khan attended the meeting, who is our procurement officer, and she recorded and was going to post both the questions and the answers that we responded with on the BidNet website. One of the so that was the main discussion. We did not do a site visit with the one person. There have been approximately, I believe, 13 respondents, or if you will, people who have requested or downloaded the RFP. I think there may have been a few others, but they don't seem to be valid. So we're in that neighborhood between 10 and 15 who have at least looked at the RFP, which is encouraging. I did call Shab Khan a little earlier. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a hold of her to see if any questions which were due as of yesterday had arrived. And I didn't hear anything from her, but I also didn't get through to her. So I'll try that again, but she will be posting or distributing those questions for our response. I will reach out again. One of the questions or requests that came out of the May 3rd meeting was a request for an asbestos survey that we can post as an addendum to the RFP. I did send out an email, give it to.
And before we take that up as another sub item of the agenda, there was another request for some additional information about plot lines and setbacks.
Yes.
Hank has been working with Jarvis. I've spoken with Fred. We're getting that information together, and we'll be able to provide what we're able to provide without creating any liability.
Okay, good.
We can't come back with something that says you can definitely build here, but we can come back with documenting the measurements of the existing non-conformance, which sets the boundaries.
Okay.
I was simply doing a survey because that wouldn't seem to have any liability, would it?
We have a survey. They've asked for additional information to be noted on the survey.
Okay.
The question was, could you put the existing zoning setbacks per regulation on the survey? So basically the bidder was looking for a box in which he could build by right. And the problem with that is the lot is non-conforming. So the rule is he can rebuild so long as the non-conformance, we believe he can rebuild so long as the non-conformance is not any greater, meaning he doesn't move any closer to the sides or the front. In speaking with Fred, there is a minor ambiguity in the zoning bylaws, because the zoning bylaw on this matter says you can rebuild or renovate, provided you don't extend the conformance and the usable square feet doesn't increase by the lesser of 1,000 square feet or 50% of the current. So given that the property's a little over 1,200 square feet, you could add about 500-600 square feet and not encroach further towards the lot lines. That should be good. However, the way the zoning article, that part of the zoning bylaw is written, the introduction says reconstruction or renovate, but all of the rest of the zoning ordinance says renovate.
Right.
So the building commissioner and zoning enforcement officer, in his role there, he's going back to the planning board for clarification, to make sure that it's not just renovate, that the reconstruction would be allowed as well. And he will have a determination for us that we can share by May 30th.
Okay. Thanks.
So, and what he also said is if they can't do the existing conformance, then it would be, so many feet off the street, so many feet off the back line, so many right and left. He feels he'd be able to approve that without even going to the planning board for an A&R.
An
So-
A&R being a
A&R is
Approval not
Is-
required.
Okay.
it's so ironic. It's the planning board gives approval, that approval is not required.
A.
So yes, my eyes gloss over on that.
I
kind of
know
stuff.
it sounds like catch-22
Yeah.
in municipal parlance. Anyhow, anything else, Alan, on that?
Nope,
So
that-
we're
that-
working on getting those lines superimposed upon the
Well, what we'll probably be able to provide is the current setback of the buildings,
right.
the measurements,
Yep.
and a statement from the building commissioner, zoning enforcement officer, as to whether or not reconstruction is allowed within those existing setbacks,
Right.
or what the setbacks would be that he could approve.
Okay. Which hopefully could extend some of those setbacks, maybe particularly in the back of the property.
Well,
I don't
there's,
know.
Effectively, the encroachment is predominantly on the side, on
Okay.
one of the sides. And so the question is whether you'd have to make the building about a foot and a half narrower
Okay.
than it currently is.
All right.
So we'll get determination, working with Fred and working with Fred, we'll be able to get a determination of what's allowed, what's not allowed, and what, if any, approvals are needed. Fred understands the goal is to come up with guidance where he could approve the plans without even having to go to the planning board if possible.
Okay.
He's looking for the least involved solution for us, which is great.
Great. Do we know when we expect to have his?
He said we would have it definitely in time to provide the response by May 30th.
Okay. Great. Okay. So we're a week, not just over a week away. But,
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on then to the asbestos. I did send out an email. I contacted two asbestos companies who do asbestos surveys, pre-demolition asbestos surveys. One via recommendation, another one I just picked off of the internet. As you can see, the fees range at the low end at approximately $1,250 up to $1,950. And The process is, or the cost structure is, these folks that do this, and Ken, please correct me if I misstate things. You're probably very aware of the process. There's a fee for just coming out to the site, fixed cost. And then they do a number of samples depending upon the size and nature of what they see inside. I did mention that we know that the asbestos per the property card, the shingles are asbestos, and that we expect that the flooring inside is asbestos, but they'll take samples of other parts of the building, of the dwelling, that they might consider containing asbestos. And then using those samples, they will send them off to a lab and we will get a report. They both gave, not to exceed numbers. One was more of a fixed number. The second, the 1950, was a fixed number. The other was not to exceed. So if they did if they discovered they needed fewer samples, that number may come down. So I would ask that we, and I can make the motion, that we appropriate. Yeah, go ahead,
Question
Alan.
if we make
Questions.
I got some questions about this before we go ahead, I think.
Okay.
My question is, why do we want to do this before we close a deal? We know there's asbestos there. We know that they will have to, that most of the debris from the property will have to go to a specialized landfill.
Mhm.
We take on some additional potential liability because we're going to define where there's asbestos and how much is there. We may miss something, or we may over define. There's no value added from having that assessment now, rather than waiting until we've closed the deal and just making it part of the cost of subsidizing the property rebuild. And then the demo contractor who's actually going to do the demolition will get a survey done that meets their needs,
Mhm.
and they'll specify what samples get taken, where they get taken, all that sort of thing. And they take all the liability. We don't take any liability. So to me, I don't think it adds value, and it doesn't change the ultimate cost of doing the business.
So the feedback from the bidder who was at the May 3rd meeting
Go ahead, Alan.
is knowing the scope of the asbestos issue lets them make a more accurate bid. Whereas if they're the winning bidder and they have to do the asbestos survey, then they're going to assume they're going to have to potentially overestimate the cost of the asbestos remediation to cover, because we wouldn't want them coming back and saying, oh, by the way, the amount of asbestos is larger than we anticipated in our bid. We need extra funds or extra subsidy to cover that cost.
But wouldn't they still do that if it turns out they're going to have to do? They're not going to rely on our test, right? They may forbid.
But there may be asbestos that's not visible. You may have to open up the walls, go check the piping, things of that sort.
Yeah.
That I don't think the asbestos contract, the tester will do. He's going to test where you tell him to test. If you don't tell him to test in the right place, that's your problem, not his. You got the liability.
We do not tell him, from my discussions, and once again, I'm, looking to others, Ken, maybe in particular, if you have experience in this, they will go in and, per my discussions with them, they will decide what they believe might contain asbestos, and in their report, so say. Now, given that we provided everyone an opportunity to visit the site and understand, what's inside roughly the facility, and then have a report done saying, here's what was done, which is what the report will say. And we basically say, that's all we're providing. We provide nothing more than this. It was done by so-and-so. We would tell bidders, I assume, the contact information or, the report, which should have contact information of the, companies that did it. I think we mitigate or minimize our liability. We're basically saying we let them have full run of the place. They decided what to sample. They told us what they sampled, and take that as it is. We've just tried to respond as best we can to provide information. And we are, we can state we're not to be held liable for this. We are purely dependent upon the report from these people.
It would be the bidder's decision whether to
accept
to rely on the report or, in fact, I think it actually helps us because we're providing a professional asbestos survey that gives an indication. The bidders reply, if they choose to rely solely on that, that's fine. They're still responsible for properly removing asbestos. And they chose not to do any more survey work, then in my mind, they came back to us, our RFP says they're taking the conditions as is.
Here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
With any municipal job or government job that I bid, there is a hazardous material report that is given to all the bidders. Now, here's what happens. If I, as a general contractor, I accept those terms and responsibilities based on what that firm discovered, during construction, if more is discovered, I simply get a change order to take care of it. The owner of the property is responsible for the hazardous materials. You can't just write it off and say, oh, well, it is as is, where is, when it comes to hazardous materials, especially where this is for town of Westborough. Be the same thing when I bid for work at the Forbes building. There was a report done, like say that the not to exceed $1,250. Mm-hmm. They will identify everything as professionals that they could find and see. But if they start ripping up the slab after, they get the job, and they find asbestos under the slab, no one could have known that, then they will ask for a change order for that. And that's something we would have to deal with. But no contractor is just going, in other words, the guy that was there at that meeting, what he asked for was absolutely correct. You don't just bid that stuff blind. You might do it on a private job, but not on something that is involved with a town or municipality or the state or federal government. We can't shirk certain responsibilities just by saying, oh, well, you agreed to that. It isn't going to cut it with hazmat. That's all.
Understood.
Wait a minute. I want to recognize people. Raise your hand if you have a question. All right, Nancy.
Did the bidder ask for this? I was just wondering how it came to be. I did miss a meeting. I don't recall us searching for an asbestos survey, and maybe I missed something. Did the bidder ask for an asbestos survey?
Yes. The bidder at the meeting asked if we could provide an asbestos survey. That's what generated this action, this
Gotcha.
Research a bit. I think one difference, Ken, and help me out with this. The RFP states that we're going to sell the property for $1 to the winning bidder. They will then own that property. Given that, which is different than probably most contracting work, at that point, could they really come back and ask for?
How much information did you disclose? you're dealing with hazardous materials in
Right,
the Commonwealth of
right.
Mass. We're dealing with the Department of Environmental Protection. Okay, I'm just
Mhm,
looking at to protect us.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's
no,
and he had every right to ask for that, and it just makes sense because the other guys who are not asking for it, all right, their costs will just escalate. Like Alan said earlier, at least if it's identified, which I believe we do have legal obligations for that as a town. All right, they all know they're all on the same playing field.
Mhm.
They're not just going to like randomly throw a number like, okay, asbestos abatement, I'm going to throw $40,000 at that. They could all be doing that instead of maybe it was $4,000.
Mhm.
So isn't it worthwhile for us to know and to protect ourselves? I think that's
Yeah,
cheap
yeah.
insurance.
Nancy?
So I guess, let's put aside whether or not we'd be responsible. I do know when I was there with Habitat for Humanity, I know Ken was there as well. They walked in the door and they said, oh, floors are asbestos. They could tell by the size of the tile. So I think any bidder who sees this building, knows when it's built, is going to know there's going to be asbestos. I guess the question we have is, even if we get a survey, even if we get an excellent survey, it's going to be an estimate. Until you really demolish something, you're not going to know what's there. They're gonna do some topical testing. They're gonna do the floor. They're gonna do the roof. It's small money. I don't object to doing the asbestos test, but I kind of agree with Hank. If it's going to be, well, it's a good guess as to what we see. It's half information. It is some information. I don't see, as long as we don't take responsibility of saying this is accurate, I have no problem doing it. But if I were the bidder, I'd want to do my own test. And I'll know that even my testing group may say, well, I gotta do something invasive to test here or something there. I don't know where these folks are going to test. They say, no more than 40. One only budgets about 20 tests. I don't, we know the roof, that's one test. We know the floor, that's a second test. I don't know how much testing they're going to do. I guess I want to avoid presenting that, I think it's one thing to say, we believe there's asbestos. I think it's another thing to say, this is the amount of asbestos is there. And maybe it doesn't matter.
Well,
but
the
Wait
survey
a minute,
wouldn't
Alan,
say.
Alan.
Sorry.
Okay, got to raise your hand. Go ahead, Alan.
So the survey wouldn't say this is the amount of asbestos there. This would say, here's what we tested and here's where there's asbestos and where there isn't. There could still be other places where asbestos might be. When I look at what they're going to test, if they test roofing materials, outside shingles, the floor, the mastic that was used to adhere the floor tiles to the concrete is visible. So I would expect they would scrape and test that because that's a usual seepage spot.
Mhm.
And could give an indication whether or not the asbestos has permeated the concrete of the slab, right? Which would require slab removal or shaving or sealing and treatment and other things like that. So, in that regard, I would expect it would be pretty comprehensive. In my walk through the property, I didn't see any insulation on piping, right? In the visible in the utility room, and the piping basically goes from that room directly to the back of the sink and the toilet and the tub, right?
I don't even think there's insulation in that house.
Right. And there's no visible installation. Given that, I think it would give the bidders a pretty good expectation of what they would find and what they should bid for. Again, the bidder who was present, who asked for it, said, if he has a good sense of what's there, he can bid more accurately. And he said, of course, we could find something that, wasn't anticipated down the road, but having the survey minimizes that chance.
Okay.
I'm actually recommending that we do the survey.
Okay. I have my
Okay.
hand raised. I have a legal question. And then I'd like to get Hank's response to what we've talked about since he brought it up. Once we sell the property because the nature of the RFP is the bidder bids based upon the fact that they will own the property. If we accept their bid, we will do a transaction for $1. They then own the property. I would assume, and correct me, Nancy, as an attorney, is not that at that point all liability on that one unless we deliberately misrepresented?
Well, yeah. That brings up my question is I agree. We're selling it where is as is all risk on you. That's how we're bidding it. But that's why I guess I question the more information we give them. I think what we have to say is here's a courtesy copy of a survey, but we do not rely on it. I mean, we have to put asterisks. This is
No,
not
we don't.
you don't rely on it. This is informational purposes only. You're urged to do your own testing.
Okay, yeah. Alan.
Yeah.
No, we don't have to put any caveats on it.
No.
We're saying here's a survey by a licensed company, environmental company, and here's the report. We don't have to put any caveats. They have the survey company has liability for the accuracy of the information and the accuracy of the testing in the lab they use, right? This as is condition doesn't exempt any liability we could have for hazardous materials. Hazardous materials, if you buy a property and it turns out that there's hazardous waste on it, there are rights to go back to the prior owner for responsibility. And it's even though the contract is as is. And remember, we're selling the property. There's a subsidy involved. There's a land development agreement. If someone comes in and says, gee, the overall cost of, asbestos remediation is too great to do within the existing P&S and land development agreement because they find even more stuff afterwards, they can come back and simply notify that they're unable to execute the contract. And then we end up with the property back and we start over. So, to me, providing the information is going to provide a more accurate bid and give them a better sense, they are free to say, gee, the tile has it, the mastic has it. I'm going to assume the concrete has it and build that into the cost. That's great. And that's, better than this. If they look and say, gee, the tile has it, it wasn't found in the mask in the adhesive. I'm going to bid assuming it's not in the concrete. That's their choice.
Okay, I'd like to go back, even though he didn't raise his hand. Hank's
got his hand raised.
Oh, he does.
Raised.
Oh, okay. Hank,
there's another alternative. I'm just concerned that we're getting ourselves involved in as if we were developers, contractors. Step by step, we're doing a lot more work than we really are geared up to handle. Another way to deal with it is to proceed as we are, and when you're not going to sell the property before you execute an LDA, and the LDA is like you're going to have a P&S and an LDA.
Right.
I'm not sure you'll actually have a P&S. You may just have an LDA, but you could wait until you have a bidder chosen, and then you could agree as part of the final negotiations before closing to reimburse them for whatever testing they think needs to be done. You may also need to do lead testing. You may also need to do testing to see if there's been any oil leaks. I don't know, but the demolition contractor will know, and we'll identify what needs, and you can reimburse them before you close the deal. The idea being that if they find things and they don't want to proceed, you reimburse them and they walk away from it clean.
Yeah.
And it just allows you to push the work act. Choosing the supplier, managing the work. Let somebody else do all that stuff.
Okay, Ken, you raised.
Why would we not want to take this off the table and disclose what is there? The hygienist is going to go in. They can take a quick sample of paint okay, it's like in 5 seconds in the lab, it's either lead or not lead. And it's also parts per million when it comes to the overall demolition of a structure. Why would we not disclose what is there instead of waiting until, okay, well, then we'll start all over. This will go on it could go on for too long. Just do the report for $1,250, not to exceed. Make sure that they do the lead paint sampling. 99 out of 100 times, the mastic, even if it's hot, they just take it up with a chemical and throw it in the same containers that they put the tiles in. The concrete, I haven't seen hot concrete unless it's on a wastewater treatment plant. That's way beyond something like this. But why would we not want to disclose what's there so everybody is on an even footing, including us knowing what's there? Why not?
Okay,
Go ahead.
Nancy.
I guess my concern, I don't know municipal law, and Alan, I'll take that everything you say is correct, but I know in commercial law, if you don't know something, you're not responsible for it. I have in my legal past been advised by environmental lawyers. Your property used to have a dry cleaners on it. You want to do a phase 2, you do a phase 2, but what you find you have to clean up. And so I am hoping from a legal perspective to put that on our developer. Whatever is there, you have to clean up. And
Okay, so
I guess the issue, and we can skip, I'm just going to assume you're right, Alan. Okay. I'm just letting you know that's my background. But regardless, I kind of agree with Hank on this. If we're going to do testing to give people more accurate information, you got one guy showing up and he says he wants this information. Well, great. What if he doesn't bid? It's $1,200, and then maybe somebody else is like, well, I don't want that test. I want this company doing this test. I like the idea of, we get some people and they can say subject to doing whatever test they want to do. I don't know why we're preempting this information. It's not that we're not going to give it, but why are we giving it now, I guess.
Okay, let me respond to that. We had one bidder show up, take the time out of their schedule to actually come to the meeting. That gives me sort of a sense of, I don't know, confidence that they're going to bid. They specifically asked for this to help them prepare their bid. I think it's a very reasonable request. We obviously want to get the lowest bid possible for the demolition, particularly, and the reconstruction. So doing this, we're not talking about a lot of money. So I don't think we're arguing about money amounts. I think we're arguing more about, I'll use the word liability and things like that. But the process, this will go out to everyone. And if anything, will, I believe, help them come up with the best bid possible. And I believe we will not be liable as long as we say, here's the report that we got. Take it as you may. We don't have a process per the RFP for people to come in beforehand. They did have the opportunity to walk through, and any good contractor, builder could have walked through, and I would expect, Ken, and correct me if I'm wrong, would have seen obvious, places of asbestos. So the fact that others did not do this tells me, well, they may assume it, who knows, but by us providing the information, it might help them understand, okay, I understand now what I have to do. I don't have to highball my bid to do the worst case scenario, because I do have reasonable information from licensed contractors. So that's why I believe this is a reasonable thing to do, particularly given the one person who showed up, the one bidder who showed up and requested this.
and I'll add to that, because we're a municipal agent, the land development agreement is going to be what it is. It's complex. P&Ss are complex, more complex, and more difficult to finalize with a municipal entity than in private transactions, because there's certain things that can be very typical in a private transaction P&S that aren't allowed under state law. Now, the good news is it looks like most of the bidders or the people interested are folks who do work and have acquired property from municipalities, so that should ease it. For me, reducing friction, okay, is worth it. I don't believe we're increasing our liability because we're providing, in fact, if anything, we're reducing it. Early on in this process, there was a discussion as to whether or not we should have Ty and Bond come out and do a level 1 assessment because of the fuel tank, the outside fuel tank, and it was decided, given the condition that we had by the folks who looked at it, that wasn't necessary. In all honesty, when he asked about it, it's like, oh crap, it was, oh man, we should have done that. We should have thought proactively to have the survey and provide as much hazmat information as we can. If we say we're not providing it, but we expect the winning bidder will do the necessary surveys and will reimburse, then we're saying, yeah, this should have been done, but we're not going to do it, and we'll pay for it, and then we have no control over what the cost is or who does it. Whereas here we can say, I would actually make a motion that, we authorize, I think we still have some money in prior authorizations for funding for preparing the property for sale, but I didn't have a chance to go back and look at it. I would almost say to authorize the expenditure for asbestos and lead testing, and just provide that information to all the bidders. If it gives them information that lets them refine their bid and estimate their costs more sharply, then I'd much rather have an accurate bid than a bid that's going to require changes or them coming back to us, as part of the P&S process where the financial numbers might change significantly. That'll slow the progress down. And I look at, and it just makes things more complex. We have to meet again to approve those. Right.
Not to interrupt you, Alan. We are running tight on time. If part of this was not to talk about lead testing, it was purely asbestos testing, and we have quotes, we have hard quotes for that aspect. No one has asked for lead testing.
Okay, then I would move to approve the up to $1,250 for an asbestos survey, provided the results can be available to us by May 29th.
From my discussions with both individuals, and I talked to the individuals that would actually be in charge of testing next week, they would have that available next week, sometime next week. They said kind of midweek, but let's assume the end of the week. So I think the 30th, and that would be in there. Just so, yeah, they understand time is of the essence. So given that, do I have a second to Alan's motion?
Second.
Ken seconds it. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I would like to take a vote on the appropriation of monies not to exceed $1,250 for the process of determining or creating receiving a report on the asbestos present at 3 Baylor Avenue.
Okay, Bain.
Bain, yes.
Salzman, yes.
Armitage.
Yes.
Storm.
Storm, yes.
Rouch.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
I just don't know the right answer.
Okay, Edinburgh, yes.
Okay.
So the motion passes 5-0-1 with 6 present.
Okay. Given the vote, I will now contact, after this meeting, the Northeast Environmental Labs of Danvers to begin the process of the testing of the asbestos, since they are the only ones that are at or below the level we appropriated. Any questions to that? Okay. I think we're agreed. All right. Thank you. Moving on, and let's try to get going again. This was important, though. Alan, you want to talk about the bridge subsidy campaign?
Sure, yeah. So we were contacted by Mass Coalition for the Homeless that is sponsoring legislation specifically to help seniors age 62 plus who qualify for affordable housing assistance but have not yet been in the program, for them to receive bridge subsidies from the time they're unable to pay the rent to the time they're accepted in the program. They're looking to add $10 million or earmark $10 million in the fiscal year 24 budget for the state to provide those subsidies for up to 1,000 senior households. What they're looking for us to do is to effectively sign a statement of petition of support that we think this is a good idea, and to make to add a brief statement of support as we sign, that they could potentially share with others that they're looking for support. So they're asking for assistance in advocacy and lobbying, which is within our purview as a trust. So I can, share some information about the program and who already has signed on very quickly here. And I'll make it bigger. Okay. And so this is talking about low-income older adults.
And I think you sent this out.
Yes, I think I sent this out if people
Yes.
saw it. It'll be included in the minutes as a relevant document when we post the minutes. But you can see there's a lot of organizations and government entities that have already signed on in support of this. And so effectively
I move we instruct the chairperson to sign the letter of support and add whatever comments are appropriate in the name of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust.
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? I don't see any. Roll call vote.
Pink,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Ed,
Bain, yes.
Kate,
Storm, yes.
Ken,
Salzman, yes.
and Edinburgh, yes. Motion passes 6-0, 6 present.
Okay.
Okay. The new logo design review, have not received it from the high school. They weren't able to attend today, so we'll move that to a future meeting.
Okay. Moving
So
on.
that's easy.
Yeah. Rogers Road project.
Yeah.
Uh,
Two things
Hank?
happening on Rogers. Two things happening with Rogers Road, Ed. The players have changed a bit. The Housing Authority Board have identified Maureen Johnson and Joan Pavolis to partner with Kate and myself as a subcommittee to work on proposals for Rogers Road. That group of 4 will meet the second week in June and start discussing how do we move forward. Which that's progress, because we've gotten the board engaged, and the board's got some strong board people supporting us.
Okay.
We've also renewed the quote for the possibility of installing a wheelchair lift or a lift device in the building to allow I won't say handicap, but to allow challenged adults who have challenges with stairs to make it to the second floor. The quote on that is $53,000. Plus, the housing authority would have to provide a hoistway inside the building to meet a set of specifications. Yesterday, we toured the building with the building department and the fire department representatives, and they're supportive that this can be done. It's an open question as to whether there's a lot of push from the fire department to install sprinklers on the second floor of the building because of emergency egress and fire protection and such. The next step is that with the housing authority, we have to prepare an emergency egress plan that would identify how we would get 17. The number of apartments, I can't remember how many apartments are up there, but how we would empty out the number of apartments. I think it's 17 apartments, how we would get all those people out of there in the event of a fire emergency. We will also need to engage an engineering and architectural firm to do at least a first pass, a phase one concept design on where we would put the elevator and what building reinforcement and building reconstruction would be required to put the lift in. So we'll talk about this in our meeting in June. Assuming we get support, we'll go get some quotes from consultants to help us with the emergency egress plan, and architects to help us with the structural work. It probably end up being the same people, but I don't know yet because I don't even know who to engage.
Okay.
We're also talking with, we're starting to initiate conversations with a couple of consulting firms who can help with the Rogers Road proposal, particularly in terms of needs assessments and in terms of financing opportunities, political permitting processes, who would help us understand how to work with the state, the HCD and others to get permission to go ahead and do whatever we want to do there. I've had one firm that I talked to that has said, no, we're just too busy. We can't do it. I've got one other that can do some of the work, but not all of it. And we're still looking for other consultants to bring forward. So we're probably a couple of months away from having appropriate bids and consultants to come ask for money.
Okay. Just for clarity, we're talking about two different projects. Is that correct? One is to facilitate the lift exit from a second floor and sprinklers. That's one project at the current Rogers Road location. A second issue would be to begin the development of, I'll say, engineering of design, what have you, of the property upon which we look to build senior housing.
Correct.
Okay.
So if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
So it's good to hear on the new construction project. With respect to the lift and the fire sprinklers, funding those activities is outside of the allowable scope of the trust, unless there was a firm determination that units would have to be vacated and taken off the market. So our trusts, as far as preservation, it's not bringing up the current code. It is helping fund activity that keeps units from not being rentable. Our efforts in the past, just so everyone's aware, on those two issues, the lift and the sprinkler system, was to work with the housing authority to get the information necessary so that our state delegation could request a budgetary earmark,
right,
to cover some or all, most or all of the cost of those two projects as a senior affordable housing public safety issue.
And that didn't happen. We did not, although we reached out to an individual within the town who has civil engineering background, they did not engage. And as a result, we were not able.
The housing director at the time did get a quote for the lift.
Okay.
But we didn't get all of the information necessary to put together a package for at that time Senator Eldridge.
Right.
So
Okay.
once all the cost and basic project information is available, and and even just a rough order of magnitude, we could help sponsor and get support for Senator Moore to initiate that type of an earmark for an upcoming fiscal year budget.
Okay. So, Hank, per the second part of this, which is how do we move forward on the preparation of building, as we've discussed in the past, some number of senior housing units on the property, near the, that is currently managed, owned, I guess, by the housing authority, near the senior center. What do we need to do? Are we asking?
We need to have a meeting with the people who've now been identified by the housing authority as their people to work with from the board, and start working. Work with them to define how they want to go about this process of hiring consultants to help us with the engineering portion of it and with the financing and permitting portions of the work.
Okay. Do we expect to have?
After talking with the Acton Housing Authority, they clearly told us we need consulting help to even get to the point where we figure out what can be done and how to go about doing it.
Okay. But when would we expect to be able to come before the committee?
The first meeting, the first contact that was identified by the Housing Authority Board went back to the board and said, "Hey, here's what we want to do," and the board said, "Well, we'd like to have 2 different people work on that."
Right.
So June the 6th will be the first time that we get together with people who are authorized to work on this for the Housing Authority.
Okay, fair enough.
My guess is it'll be 2 or 3 months after that before we come back defining what kind of seed money we need to go hire consultants.
Fair enough.
Cool.
All right. As long as we're getting some rough timeline.
We're moving, but we're moving at a glacial pace, but the housing authority has very limited resources for this. And there's
right.
One of the 2 people who's going to work on it's a brand new board member.
Right. And also it should be noted that as per my information, the current director is retiring. Ms. Strand.
Yes, and they have hired a replacement.
Yeah. Kate, you have information on that?
There's a meet and greet, I believe, on Monday. I believe her name is Kathy, and I want to say Valent. I'm not sure if that's correct or not.
I met Kathy yesterday. She's brand new to the authority. We didn't talk much about what her background is, but the new person is starting to work a transition with the existing ED.
Okay. All right. So they have hired someone. That's news. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. If you could send maybe for the minutes, just so everybody knows, Kate, can you get the exact name and we can add it into the minutes of the new director? Okay. Moving on.
So moving on, just given the hour and being respectful of everyone's time, there is nothing time sensitive related to High Street Extension or first time homebuyer program.
Right.
So the only remaining agenda would be assessing expanding responsibilities of the trust.
Right.
I, as the select board representative, was contacted by the town manager to see if Ed as chair and I would be willing to meet with representative from the town and some other boards. With the departure of Jim Robbins as our town planner, there was interest in there's monitoring and management activity that was falling to him. There's also activity that falls to the Housing Partnership Committee. And that committee's been pretty inactive. The person who is really coordinating and running that committee was a lawyer with specific domain expertise in affordable housing, and he's retired. And after, I think, over 2 decades, resigned from serving on the Housing Partnership Committee. Ed, this is just an update to let you know that Ed as chair, myself, will be attending this meeting to talk about what the trust might be willing to do and could do to assist with some of these activities. As a high level, one of the discussions, which is not uncommon in other communities that have an active housing trust, is the housing partnership becomes a subcommittee of the trust, where there's a few trustees and other citizens on the committee to help serve that function. There's some other things that we're allowed to do that we could take on to make sure there's continuity and it's being managed well.
Right. And we have that meeting. We will be meeting next Tuesday, the 23rd.
So this
is with that group that the town manager has requested that we get together to sort everything out.
So it's an initial conversation to discuss what is possible and what might be needed or requested of us.
Right, and we'll report back at if not at our next meeting, if not before.
Yeah.
So I think that's everything. One other question I have is there is a request for someone from our team to be part of the CPA allocation. Was it the
we're supposed to appoint a member of the Community Preservation Committee?
Yes.
So people should think about if they want to be that liaison, and we can put that on the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah, and let me know if you are interested. Basically, this is a position along with about 7 or 8 other departments, commissions, etc., that meet to determine the allocation of the monies that will come in through the CPA. I'll use the word surtax monies. And by law, I believe 10% must go to affordable housing, but at times there may be a desire to do more than that, as well as preserve, other areas are, preservation, historic preservation, et cetera, et cetera. So if you think you might be interested, let me know. We do need to identify an individual to work on that committee. Excuse me, Hank? Oh, okay. I think that was a sidebar. So we'll bring that up at our next meeting. I don't think it's anything until we start receiving some money into that kitty. There's not much that individuals need to do. Any other issues or questions just before we adjourn? And thank you all for sticking to the agenda. And thank you, Westborough TV. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, Nancy seconded. All right, given that, we need a roll call vote.
Nancy?
Nancy, yes.
She's having audio trouble, but that's a yes.
Yes.
Bain?
Bain, yes.
Storm,
Storm, yes.
excellent. Salzman,
Yes.
and Edinburgh, yes. It passes 6-0. We
And
are
Rouch.
adjourned.
Rouch.
Roush, yes.
Oh, sorry, Hank. I missed Hank. Sorry. It passes. I didn't mean to not count you, Hank. Sorry about that. It passes. It's because you don't have a picture on the screen, just a big H. It passes 6-0, 6 being present. Thank you, Ed, for catching me on that.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
and
you.
thank you, Westborough TV.